Hey guys, this is ADWCTA, and you are watching the Whispers of the Old Gods final meta review. There was a card dump earlier today. This is Thursday night, and earlier today, the card dump gave us all the cards of Whispers of the Old God. So we now know the entire meta. It's over. And we are going to embark on a project over the course of this weekend that we have never done before. It is, first of all, going to be 12 to 13 videos, and each of those are going to be 15 minutes or less. If you watch this channel, you know we've never done that before. I've never made a video that was under 15 minutes, but the video editor is making me, and so I'm going to give it a shot. So without further ado, Whispers of the Old God, meta. What is happening? What are all the neutral cards doing? What are all the class cards doing? What can you expect when you step foot in the arena? So if you haven't watched this kind of card review before, it doesn't quite go card by card. I mean, it kind of goes card by card, but what we're going to try to cover is the theme of the meta. And you can do that with the arena because the arena moves kind of all together. It's not like Constructed where you try to like figure out if a card fits into a particular deck, or if a particular deck gets better or worse and how that affects all the other decks, and it just Constructed becomes a mess. Arena is much more straightforward in terms of being able to predict where things are going. And Whispers of the Old God has made it even simpler by basically printing a bunch of cards that we have more or less already seen before. And we'll get into this later, but I am so glad now that Athiuen cards are not in here, because Athiuen cards would have made the whole thing even more vanilla. Old Gods cards are slow and vanilla. That's not shocking. Generally, most cards printed are slow, and most cards printed are vanilla. That's in every big expansion, that's the case. Otherwise, you'll just have too many crazy cards without a base from which to play. And Blizzard doesn't want that, and we don't want that. But the thing with the Old Gods is that almost every card is slow. Like, we'll go into just how ridiculous this entire card set is as far as the arena goes. And almost every card is vanilla. So we're calling it a new meta, and it will be a new meta because it'll be a bunch of different cards and they'll be organized in offering rates that you've never seen before. And so you will be in a different state. But it's not really new. It's like all this has happened and it will happen again. It happened in Classic. We're working our way back there, and we're adding a slight Old God flavor. And the Old God flavor that we're adding, in the arena at least, is probably not something that's going to be a huge deal in ranked. I don't know. But it's going to be taunts. This is the key to slowness in the arena as far as the Old Gods go. Looking through all of the cards, the big impact cards are the taunt cards, and we'll get deeper into this immediately. It's our first topic, but one of the key things to know about Arena is that not all cards are created equally, and I don't just mean some cards are good and some cards are bad. I mean some cards are bad, and so therefore you almost never see them. If we rate a card, let's say at 30, and we rate a card at 50, and we rate a card at 70. That doesn't mean you'll see the 70 card like 40% more than the 50 rated card, or that much percent more than the 20 rated card. You'll see that 70 rated card everywhere. You'll see the 50 rated card every now and then. You will almost never see the 30 rated card, because that's how people pick, right? People don't pick bad cards, generally speaking, unless they have like high synergies or they don't know what they're doing or something. So the meta shifters are really just these kind of few cards that are at the top, right? That are definitely more than 50, more than 60s really make an impact. And the ones that are more than 70, well, they're the ones that are setting what the meta is. And there's usually one card out of the entire set that goes far and beyond what all the other cards do. And it was Piloted Shredder in GVG, which set the meta as having a very good, solid 4-drop curve that's unremovable. And that's also a mech for the synergies. It was Kraken in TGT, which set the meta as, hey, if you just get to this late game, here's a ridiculously overpowered card that can actually have initiative as well, which we hadn't seen before outside of Fire Elemental, a class card. So what is going to be the Arena Boogeyman as far as the neutral commons go, which means it's seen in every class, and you're going to be able to draft it with that plus offering rate? We'll get to it, but I'll give you a hint. It's a card with taunt. And it's a slow card. And it's all going to fit into the theme of the Old Gods being slow and vanilla. And it just doesn't look terribly interesting. But it will have very interesting effects in the arena once you dig down into it. Like, Whispers of the Old Gods is going to be a heavily skill-based set. I'm very excited for that aspect of it. You're going to hear me say things like boring and vanilla, and I don't mean that the arena is going to be boring. I mean that these cards are boring. And that's okay, because in the arena, everything's random. So you can have a bunch of pretty boring cards and still have a pretty exciting meta. And especially with Whispers of the Old God, I have a feeling it's going to be a lot more skill intensive. And maybe a little lacking in the RNG and fun factor. But I don't know. I have fun when I'm more in control of the situation and I get to kind of manipulate my opponents. But we'll see. So first taunt card, I'm going to go in the order of mana. Bilefin Tidehunter. Bilefin Tidehunter is a 2 mana card that really should say Murloc Tidehunter. And it is a 2/1 summon 1/1 ooze with taunt. Nothing much to say here. 1/1 taunts are annoying, but they're not that good. And as a 2-drop, the 1/1 taunt probably won't matter because you normally want to hit the 1/1 first, especially if you have a 3/2 on the board. If you have a 2/3, you may want to hit the 2/1, but if you're afraid your opponent will ping or something, you'd hit the 1/1 anyway. It prevents people from going face. Like, it's better than a Murloc Tidehunter, and Murloc Tidehunters are already pretty much a 3/2 or a 2/3 in terms of value, so this is going to be better than that. This is probably going to be better than a 3/2 or a 2/3. So hey, we have a drop, and it has a taunt, and it's a 2-drop. Pretty good. You normally think of 2-drops as kind of fast, but even if this is one of the fastest cards in this entire set, it's still not that fast because it has a taunt. And so its use case is going to be as much, like it's going to be as control as a 2-drop can possibly get. So for a 2-drop, it's still very slow. I mean, slow is not the right word. It's still very defensive. Defensive is a better word. Next card is a 3-drop. It's a 3 mana, 2/4 taunt. It's a squirming tentacle. I'm really not looking forward to seeing all these freaking tentacles around. I don't know. I'm just really not into tentacles. It's a 2/4 taunt. How good is a 2/4 taunt? Well, it's not a monkey. Don't get carried away. I know some people see this and they're like, well, it's 1 stat less than a monkey, but a monkey is amazing. This is not amazing, but a 2/4 is regularly something like, I don't know, like a 40 or something on our tier list. It's gonna be significantly more than that because a 2/4 taunt, especially on turn 3, will do a lot of work at protecting your 2-drop, right? And with that 4 health, it's not going to be removed, so you will be able to get a good trade off of this. I think it'll be better than a 3/2 or a 2/3, like that normal 50 line, but it's not going to be too much better than that. It's still a small card, and yes, in the late game it does get to taunt, but that 2 damage, it's like 2 damage is way worse than 3 damage. That's such a big jump, right? Like it's plus 50% damage, and so it is still missing that. But you know, it's going to be better than a Ironford Grizzly, right? Because it's taunt. You want the health. Infested Tauren. We've already reviewed this card before. It's not good. It's not awful because the stats do match up, but at 4 mana, you don't want to be playing a 2/3 taunt. You really don't. And the Death Rattle doesn't even have a taunt. So it's just one single taunt that is small, and then the stats added up, including the Death Rattle stats, give you what a 4-drop should give you. It's not going to be great. But hey, it is still a taunt, and it does have the stats. So card advantage-wise, it's okay. Tempo-wise, not that good. And so overall, it's going to be a pretty meh card, below average, but not too much so. So far, just a lot of middling, uninspiring cards, but they all have taunt. That's kind of the deal I'm trying to point out here. All these common neutral cards, and they're in the middle. You're going to see them. They all have taunt. How many other cards have had taunt so far in this area, right? Like, it's like Fen Creeper, Evil Heckler, Annoyotron. I think that's it. I may be like missing 1 or 2 when it comes to the neutrals, but there's really not that many. And we already have 3 more being added. This is a huge meta change. It may not seem like it because they're not terribly great cards, so they're not the meta drivers, but you're going to end up picking these cards, and so your prevalence of taunts is going to go up. And remember, there's going to be a bonus. It's going to be plus 25% bonus if we go by the TGT. It's going to be plus 50% bonus if we go by LOE. I think they may stick with the TGT one, or maybe they'll go in the middle and do like 33% bonus. Either way, you're going to see these cards, and they're going to taunt, and it's going to be annoying. Going on, we're not even done yet, right? We have a 2-mana taunt, a 3-mana taunt, a 4-mana taunt. What's next? A 5-mana taunt. Psychotron. Psychotron is a 3/4 taunt Divine Shield. If you add +1/+1 to it, it becomes a Sunwalker for 1 more mana. But clearly it's not as good as a Sunwalker. 3/4 is a lot worse than a 4/5 when you're playing it off curve. Like a lot worse. And the Divine Shield also matters more on bigger minions. So it is a mech, which is nice. And it is a very good card because we're starting at Sunwalker, right? And moving down. That's going to be insanely good because Sunwalker is really good. But I know some people look at it and say like, oh, Sunwalker, this is the best card. We're here. We finally got to the best card in the meta. We're going to see this everywhere. You are going to see this a good amount of times, but it's not like breaking the meta. It's not the best card in the meta. It's good. It's probably the second best. Maybe third best common neutral. Probably the second best common neutral. Either way, you'll see it a lot, and it's a mech, and that's very important. That's very important because now the offering rates of mechs are going to go up. The offering rates of mech are going to kind of keep pace is kind of what I mean, because this is also the only common neutral mech that's introduced, but it's good enough that you'll see it a lot. So it means the things like Tinkertown and whatever aren't going to die out, which is good. You need this kind of stuff. And okay, I'm going to go say a little bit more about Cyclotron and how Cyclotron is going to trade, right? It will trade with pretty much every 5-drop you put out here. And it will trade evenly with pretty much every 4-drop you put out there. And none of that is good. But if you look at Sunwalker, it trades evenly with every 5-drop you put out there too. It trades evenly with every 4-drop. And if you're thinking about, oh, Sunwalker could trade up. Yeah, it can trade up. How many 7-drops are you getting? What these cards are useful for is to stop these smaller cards from coming in, right? And it stops aggro. If your opponent has 3 cards and doesn't have a ping, they often trade 3 minions into Sunwalker, right? That's why it's so good. It's a 3-for-1. And your opponent doesn't have the option to just go face. So Cyclotron's like that. It could be a 3-for-1. It's probably more likely to be a 2-for-1, but it costs 1 mana less. And this is where the Sunwalker becomes a lot better, right? That 3 damage, if it doesn't kill off the opponent's minion because it has 4 health, and a lot of minions have 4 health, it's doing a lot less work than a Sunwalker. Then again, a lot of minions have 5 health too. Just overall, it is a significant step down from Sunwalker, is what I'm trying to say. Okay, so now, we are finally here. Best card ever. Not the best card ever, but the best card in the Whispers of the Old Gods that is a common neutral, and really one of the best cards in the entire set of Whispers of the Old Gods, because there's not that many good cards. Like there's a few good class common cards, but this is still going to like crack a top 10 list. And it is what may seem quite unassuming, but it is a Bog Creeper, 7 mana, 6/8 taunt. Why is it so good? Because it is basically an Iron Bark. It is basically an Iron Bark Protector. You're never going to care about that 2 extra damage on the Iron Bark Protector. And it is 1 mana less. So yes, it is 7 mana. That makes it really big. That means you can't play it well in necessarily every deck, and if you play it in an aggro deck, it comes down and gets assassinated or sapped immediately, right? But it is so well stat distributed. It's not even like overstatted or anything, right? 6/8 for 7 mana, it's missing 1 stat, but it has taunt. It kind of makes up for it. But the distribution is pretty much perfect. 6 attack kills almost anything on the board. And the 8 health means that you have more health, which can taunt more damage. So this makes it incredibly good. I have a number in my head for it. It may go up or down by like 2, but it's, again, right? These are vanilla-ish cards. You've never seen a 6/8 taunt, but you can imagine a 6/8 taunt pretty easily. And you can figure out how it fits into the meta pretty easily. And this is going to be great. So what does it mean to have this ridiculously good card? Like we're talking like Shredder level good card. And it is a 7 mana card. Well, we saw what happened when it was a 9 mana card with North Sea Kraken, right? The whole meta slowed down for it because people were picking it. And if you pick a Kraken, you got to make sure your deck gets to a Kraken so it can use the Kraken. Kraken's okay for 4 damage and face damage, but you really want to get to the point where the body is useful too. Bog Creeper is no different. You pick a Bog Creeper, you're going to want to get to turn 7. That's a lot slower than the rest of your deck and all the other options you're generally playing around with around that range, right? What's around that range? Like a nice collection of 4 drops, 1 drops, 2 drops, some big cards, but it generally centers around 4. And this is 7. That is 3 mana, 3 turns later. And another thing is, if you're going to pick this a lot, it's a huge taunt. You have much more flexibility to play control style and to kind of be off the board if you can eventually get back on the board, put up this taunt. Like, it works even better than Kraken at coming back. Because Kraken deals 4 damage, which is great, but if it doesn't kill something, your opponent can just hit your face, right? And it doesn't really matter how much tempo you get on the board, you're just dead. Bog Creeper effectively guarantees, unless it gets removed by a hard removal, that it will deal 6 damage to something. And what has 8 attack? Nothing. It'll probably deal 6 damage twice to 2 different minions before your opponents can get through to it. So all that protects your health. This is an insanely good card at slowing everything down, right? Like, imagine you have the board, you're kind of aggro, you have like a 4-drop, a 3-drop, and a 2-drop. You're like solidly leading on the board, right? Someone drops down a Bog Creeper. You can't remove it. What do? You're down 3 cards, right? It's like a Sunwalker effect. You're down 3 cards, except, and so you're wondering, is this better or worse than a Sunwalker? I don't know yet, but you kind of get the idea of what I'm talking about. It's probably a little worse than a Sunwalker. That's how powerful it is, though. And this is a common card that's going to get an offering bonus. So you will be much more freed up to play control style. And you know, mage. Okay, so that's kind of the big thing that's coming at us when it comes to the Whispers of the Old Gods. It is taunt. And we're going to go on in the next videos to talk about the other ways that the meta is going to slow down. But I'm going to end this here and kind of leave you with the best common card and all these other common cards that are taunt. And they are taunt, and they will slow the meta down, and you will be able to play more control. It's kind of an interesting concept, because we've never really been able to do that before. Healing cards were never good enough. Taunt cards were never common enough to really make it where you can almost expect your opponent to play a taunt. Like, that's what's really going to happen in Whispers of the Old God. You can just anticipate that your opponent will taunt. Right now, it's kind of like, oh, but he could taunt. It's going to be, oh, but has a very good chance of taunting. And that'll really affect how you structure the board and what becomes ideal in terms of trading and what you leave. It's going to be interesting. This video is brought to you by our patrons. And I will see you on the next video and continue our discussion about the neutral cards.